Okay, so I heard about this, or I've been hearing about this for a while. I've been very interested in this debate because I love listening to Charlie Kirk and how stupid his his takes are. And Vaush is usually pretty good at in real time analyzing stupid takes and taking them down. So without too much ado, we're going to listen to Charlie Kirk and Vaush discuss critical race theory on Tim Pool's podcast. Takes about 20 seconds for anything to start happening.
Is critical race theory the biggest threat to America, or is it at least a threat to America? Well, there's a lot of questions around that. Obviously, you guys know my position on this to a certain degree.
Which is
but there's
dumb.
a lot of other issues we need to talk about. One of the biggest stories right now is that New York has imposed we'll call it I don't want to say limited, but it's a vaccine mandate for indoor activities, entertainment performances. And Bill de Blasio said the goal here is to encourage people, mostly young people, to get the vaccine. That means if you want to go to the movie theaters, if you want to engage in normal activities like at bars, you have to have a vaccine passport. You have to have proof. They call it Key to NYC. Now, why do I bring up critical race theory? Well, for one, you know the title of this video. We're going to have conversation, a political debate or discussion about this. But there is a question some people have brought up due to the low level of vaccination among the black community and how that will disproportionately affect people.
Well, I don't understand
totally
what...
equitable. But today, the bigger thing we're doing is...
I don't understand what it has to
the
do with
news.
CRT.
It's about a conversation with two prominent individuals in politics. We've got Charlie Kirk, who I'm sure most of you know. Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself?
Charlie Kirk, honored to be here. We're gonna have some fun.
Do you describe yourself politically in any way? Like
I guess you could say I'm on the right.
conservative?
Yeah, more than that.
You
I'm
could
conservative
say.
and love the country.
Right on. Then, of course, we have Vaush. Jonah.
Howdy. Yeah, I'm Vaush. I'm a YouTuber. And I guess I call myself a libertarian socialist. I like some parts of the country. I'm a big fan of some parts of it. Some other parts I think could use some improvement.
Right on. Now, we've got Ian here, as per usual.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be in the chat today watching your super chats. So keep sending them in, and I'll be clipping them so that we can get to it at the end of the show. Hi.
And I'm very excited. So I'm just going to interject here. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm going to be switching like a crazy person. And hopefully tonight goes really well and we all learn something new.
And before we jump in, head over to timcast.com, become a member to get an ad-free experience and
Yeah,
exclusive
show
access to
on your own time.
So make sure race really, really low. Well, then they called in police, and there were big protests. Now they've actually deployed military. So I'm curious if either of you wants to jump in with your thoughts on mandates. What would happen if they came here, if you're for or against them?
Look, there are elements of mandates that I can agree with. We've already set standards for other things like the MMR vaccine, very basic standard vaccines that we expect everyone to get before they can go to school, travel. And I think for the most part that's worked. We've eradicated plagues from the world. I think we should be proud of that. With regards to COVID, since this is an ongoing pandemic.
Which, by the way, you notice how up until the anti-vax stuff in from what's his name, that doctor who claimed that the vaccines were causing autism, wasn't a political point, right? Vaccines have proven effective at getting rid of polio, at getting rid of prior to measles, mumps, rubella. This isn't something that you would hear a lot of discussion in prior to what's going on now, right? There wasn't a lot of debate about how vaccines being good. They were just accepted. It's because they've proven their effectiveness up until this point. So it's really annoying to see something that shouldn't be political, that we should all be able to agree on, like, hey, being healthy is important, ergo this thing that keeps you from getting this pretty nasty, pretty communicable disease is a good thing. And yet, because they have nothing else to offer people, they have to turn something that we would agree on into an actual item of discussion that they can point to and go, see, they just want this because they want these things. And yeah, these conversations are typically pretty terrible. So it's just really funny that like people take issue with the COVID vaccine because it's new, and you're welcome to question it, the science behind it. It is new, right? But like, the idea that the science community would not be pushing this if it wasn't relatively safe, right? Like the constant claims from people on the right who talk about like, oh, the left wants to destroy the country. Why? What's the point? What purpose does that serve? How does that strengthen our position on the left? How does that serve their goals? Right? It's just nonsense. So it's good to bring this up of like, well, why do we have a problem with this vaccine but not these ones?
Pandemic, we need to focus on approaches that are effective and that don't ostracize or exacerbate tensions. With regard to the Australian situation, it's not something I'm extensively familiar with, but generally speaking, I don't think that cracking down on protests is going to be an effective way to incentivize people to get vaccinated. What's happening in New York might be, but my main issue with it is that I'm not entirely sure how they expect people to still have their vaccination card. I know that there's been some confusion from the beginning as to whether or not you should keep that. I know people have thrown theirs away. They made it too big for wallets. It just felt a little bit haphazardly planned from the forego. So,
which, I mean, that's not a surprise. It's kind of, the vaccine was finished way ahead of schedule, way ahead of even the scientific community's predictions, and that's in part to it being the first major MMR vaccine to be massively, what's the word I'm looking for? Mass produced. That's the word I'm looking for. So, in that sense, like this isn't something that the normal channels would have been prepared for. Now, that doesn't excuse poor rollout process, anyways. But yeah, normally vaccines take somewhere between 4 to 6 years, including testing. And they may bring this up, but this also did not go through the normal FDA process. It was greenlit through the emergency approval process, which basically means that there is studies done prior to it being released to the public, but because it's so universally necessary, not just in within our own country, but like globally, like these vaccines have saved countless lives at this point. So of course they're gonna, whatever the side effects are, cannot be worse at this point. Cannot be worse than catching the disease and the side effects from catching the disease if it doesn't kill you, right? So, they may bring that point up, but regardless, this is still the safer option.
that's unfortunate. Maybe they can find other ways to incentivize it, like, for example, in schools, where they have a direct access to government records where they wouldn't have to use those little cards, That might be a little bit better. I guess we'll have to see.
Well, I'm not saying you believe this, but some people on the left, I never want to hear about the discussion of voter ID ever again.
Of course, he's got to bring an ancillary topic into this. Let's see what he has to say about this, because I don't understand how vaccines and voter ID are in any way connected.
Force people to identify their medical history to try to get into a restaurant in New York City. Yeah, look, I'm not getting the vaccine, so I'm part of the 100 million people that are unvaccinated. And it's an experimental vaccine. The FDA and CDC has said that in January.
Okay, could you entail what that means? How is it experimental? How untested is this experimental vaccine? He always does this. He makes vague claims and then never goes into the details. And so the vague claims make it sound like he has a position, but when you delve into the details of his point, he has no point.
It's questionably effective. Lindsey Graham just came down with COVID.
It is not okay. This is another horrible point. It is not questionably effective, right? The point of the vaccine isn't so that you don't catch the disease, right? The point of the vaccine, as we currently in its current form, is so that you don't catch the disease and get severe symptoms, hospitalization, or death. That's the efficacy of a vaccine, right? Because we know that there are people who catch it and are asymptomatic, right? Are we worried about any of those people? No, even though they caught it, right? So it's not about not getting the disease. It's about getting the disease but not having a massively negative outcome or a majorly negative outcome, which would be the severe symptoms, the hospitalization, and of course the worst outcome being death, right? Now, is there room within that discussion of, well, catching it could be incredibly harmful because there are already people who are having very, very severe not side effects or continued symptoms from catching it, right? Like there are lots of people who were pretty active in their day-to-day life that now get winded climbing their stairs. There are people who have had strokes because of it. There's nerve damage. There's neurological damage. Like we know that there's a lot of negatives after catching it, and that is bad. But those are a minority of the cases within the minority of people who get sick after catching it. And my camera froze up. I'm having all kinds of technical difficulties today. I have this mic here that I can't use because I either get my headphones or I get the mic. So, anyways, continuing on.
You had a ship in United Kingdom, 100% vaccinated ship that came down with COVID. It's more like a treatment than a vaccine. I'll leave that conversation to Dr. Brett Weinstein and the people that really understand how that works.
So you just admit that you don't understand how a vaccine works, and yet you're commenting on the efficacy of the vaccine. Which is it, Charlie?
But yeah, this is medical apartheid. This is trying to create a two-tiered system where if you don't make the proper medical decisions, you're not able to go to Broadway shows or go into restaurants, even when the efficacy of this vaccine is questionable at best. We see that in Israel, an 85% vaccinated country that's about to lock down again. And most of the new cases are from vaccinated patients, not unvaccinated patients. In Israel,
wrong. He'll make this point over and over, right? That these cases are coming from vaccinated people and not unvaccinated people. No. Well, yes and no, and this is misleading, right? Yes, there are cases that are coming from, or there are more people who are catching it with the symptoms that are vaccinated than not vaccinated. But you just yourself said the country is 85% vaccinated, Kirk, Charlie. So by sheer number, the number of people who are vaccinated outweigh the number of people who are not vaccinated significantly. And again, the point of the vaccination is not so that you don't catch the disease, because that's not how the vaccine currently works. Is it possible that a vaccine in the future will work that way, the way it does with polio and measles and all, and those? Maybe, but that's not what the vaccine is for. So you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what the point of this thing is, as usual.
Israel. So, sorry, you want to interject, Tim? But
Yeah.
Obviously against mandates, and I think people should be able to make their own medical decisions. I think it's pretty obvious.
Okay, so, and I have to go back to the medical part. I thought he was going to elaborate on that more. So he doesn't take issue with certain. There are other mandates that are already imposed in our society in general, right? So to think about something that you are restricted from being able to take part in without meeting certain requirements. Well, I don't know. Driving comes to mind. You have to demonstrate that you are capable of operating the vehicle safely because you were operating that vehicle around other people, right? So this is, you can say what you want about it being a government mandate in general, but this is literally about passing on a disease. Now, again, the vaccine isn't about preventing you from getting the disease. The vaccine is about you catching it. If you catch it, you're not likely to suffer a majorly negative outcome. So, on top of the fact that it also does help reduce the spreading of the disease, what you're seeing is the Delta variant is the cause of the majority of these new cases, and the reason being that the vaccine on the base or the original iteration of COVID helped reduce people's viral loads to the point where they were no longer infectious, even without a mask. You don't see that with the Delta variant, because the Delta variant, while people who are vaccinated that catch the Delta variant don't get the severe symptoms and on, they do produce a large enough viral load that they are infectious. So the vaccination thing isn't even about spreading the disease. It's about, if you catch it, you are not likely to have a negative outcome or a majorly negative outcome. So this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the entire point of this in the first place, which doesn't surprise me that Charlie Kirk doesn't understand why the mandate is what it is. On top of the fact that the voter ID laws, or the voter IDs, so the vaccine is the solution to the pandemic, right? The thing that is causing businesses to not be able to operate as normal, impacting global economics, keeping people at home, but since they can't work, they have to get subsidized through government programs, which he doesn't like any of this, right? If we were all vaccinated, we wouldn't have any of these things, right? Because if everyone's vaccinated, yes, the disease is spreading, but no one's getting severe symptoms, or I shouldn't say that. A tiny minority of people get severe symptoms, hospitalization, and death after being vaccinated. It is like the difference is like a factor of 25 by comparison, right? From vaccinated and non-vaccinated people. So if we follow the simple mandate, all these things that he's complaining about, they go away. But he won't do this, right? This is literally like that kid in class who's behaving badly because they want to do that thing that they're doing, and the teacher's like, okay, well, until you stop, everything else stops too, right? Like, we can't continue on until you stop being a dick. And he won't stop being a dick because he just wants to keep being a dick, despite the fact that him being a dick is affecting everyone else in the classroom.
Well, I disagree. I think we actually have a story we wrote on TimCast.com.
Oh, and I finished about the voter ID thing, right? So the vaccine is a solution to the pandemic. The voter IDs is a solution to what? Well, they claim it's a solution to the rampant voter fraud. Yet every aspect of, like, voter fraud does not exist in any meaningful way, right? Not only was this last election by numerous agencies said to be the most secure election we've ever had, but on top of that, the claims of voter fraud have been researched. And in the last, they analyzed, or they went through like literally a billion votes, and found less than, I think it was 0.003% fraudulent voting, right? So is there fraudulent voting? Yes. On any statistically meaningful scale? No. The level of voter fraud that would need to be committed to swing an election in a state, not for the entire election, but just to swing a state in one direction or the other for one candidate, is massive. You're talking about at least 100,000 votes in the contested states. I think the lowest number is like 40,000 or something to that effect. Like, I know Pennsylvania is like the claim is that Trump won it by 65,000, right? Talking about tens of thousands of votes for one state, and Pennsylvania isn't even. How many electoral votes is Pennsylvania worth, right? So it's an unsubstantiated claim on a problem that has been investigated and found to be basically non-existent, right? So he wants something in place to deal with that, but the actual pandemic that is he admits is a real thing, right? Because he can't deny COVID's real. He can't deny that it's harming all these aspects of our society. We have a solution for that, and he doesn't want it. He thinks it's the government trying to control you.
Our view of the lockdowns is that it's alarmism because a new study from the Public Health of England found the Pfizer vaccine is 96% effective after 2 doses at staving off the Delta variant, and AstraZeneca was 92%.
I could probably agree it's alarmism, but it's enough of an alarm for the public health leaders to undermine the argument that the vaccine is a solution to what would possibly satisfy the public.
Oh my! So you are literally being presented with data from another country that says that if you get the vaccine, there is a 96% chance that you will not catch this new, very contagious variant. And another country that says it's 92% effective at preventing you from catching that variant. Data staring you in the face that this is a solution. Oh, no. Nope. I don't agree. Based on what?
So
I mean, I was against the lockdowns in the first place. Let me be very clear when there was 1,000 deaths a day, not 334. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, a couple of points on this. First of all, it's experimental in the sense that there was an expedited process for its release, but there have been full and extensive studies taken on the safety and effectiveness of these vaccines. The reason why the FDA study hasn't been finished, the reason why it hasn't been fully vetted, isn't because they're looking for long-term health effects, it's because they're determining the extent to which it protects you over a long period of time. Ergo, the fact of the matter is, by all available data, this is...
Okay, that's an important point. So why are they concerned with the long-term effectiveness of the protection? Well, because there is already several variations to this disease, right? And it's constantly compared to the flu in the sense that we don't know if this is going to be, how often this is going to, quote, like, come around, like the way the flu does, right? So the flu, the reason you get an annual flu vaccine is because it basically takes a calendar year for a new variant of the flu to emerge and make the previous vaccine no longer it no longer meets the threshold required for it to protect you from this new one, right? So and this is just how diseases work. When the disease passes from one person to another, as it's reproducing itself, like any species does, there are anomalies in each individual aspect of or each individual piece of or each individual organism of the vaccine, right? This leads to it's just the evolutionary process, right? So sometimes these things benefit the disease, in which case that cell gets reproduced, or that it's evolution, right? The can't believe I need to explain this. And this is just what happens when the disease passes from one person to another. As a matter of fact, inside of you, it is even if you end up fighting it off, right? It mutates within you. The only reason that you don't see more of the mutations is because, as a society, we have the flu vaccines in the first place, and even though not everyone gets them, you get over the flu quick enough that you're not likely to spread it, right? Because that's the major problem with COVID, is that it's got a very long incubation period in which you are contagious. So you aren't even showing symptoms at the time, if you develop them, at the time in which you can give it to other people. And I believe it's something like 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. So, whereas the flu, you get it within a couple days, you are showing symptoms, and then a couple days after that, you are no longer contagious, right? So at worst, there's a week period in which you have the flu and you can give it to other people. With COVID, it's 2 weeks prior to you showing symptoms, and then 2 weeks after you stop showing the symptoms, which take anywhere from a couple days for some people to a couple weeks for others, right? So this is a disease in which you can give it to other people for basically 6 weeks, up to 6 weeks. And that's why this is such a problem.
Is undeniably much safer to get the vaccine. I mean, by orders of magnitude.
Let me ask you a question.
Well, wait, a couple things, because you said a few things there. There are some instances where areas have more people being infected if they're already vaccinated. But if you take a look at, this is like data mining. If you take a look at the broader statistics, especially here in America, the number of people who have gotten breakthrough cases is something like 0.003% of people who have been vaccinated. You can take a look at the numbers. Where is this new wave exploding? It's in the unvaccinated. In spite of the fact that fewer and fewer people are remaining unvaccinated, the vaccinated stay relatively healthy. And not only do they get infected way less often, they also suffer far fewer severe symptoms. Their hospitalization rates have plummeted, and their deaths are incredibly low.
I'd have to look up the numbers again, but this is if you were presented with the options or the possibilities of these outcomes, you would be insane not to take the vaccine if this was anything else, right? If you take this, I want to say it's 3%. It's 97.3%, I think, right? 90% of people who are vaccinated. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's just catching it. I forget. Oh, the outcomes of the severe symptoms or worse is like a fraction of a percentage, right? So if this was cancer and it was, hey, if you take this, you're not very likely to get cancer. You're 97% likely to not catch cancer, right? Or you're 3% likely to get cancer. And in the event that you get cancer, there is a 0.00x. We'll just say 9, right? Because I think doesn't matter. We'll say 0.9. There is a 0.9% chance that you will catch a severe enough case of that cancer that you'll die, right? So like the idea that anyone would look at those options and not take whatever the thing is that prevents you from catching like this is absolutely insane. That like despite all of the information that we have on how effective the vaccines are at preventing you from catching it, that even if you catch it vaccinated, the odds are incredibly in your favor that you won't even get very sick. And the number of people that die after catching it, after being vaccinated, is so infinitesimally small compared to not being vaccinated that like I can't even believe this is a discussion that's being had.
Compared to people who are unvaccinated. This is by all means an effective vaccine.
What's your opinion of Johnson & Johnson, the FDA saying that it might cause a rare nerve disease?
That's something that, first of all, when you take a look at that, you have to recognize that even if that was...
Okay, before he gets into his answer, because I'm trying to not base this off of what other people have said, because I could have easily just watched analysis of this all day today. Would have been very entertaining. Okay, so he's presenting you with what about the idea, or what about the Johnson? Okay, I don't know what this is about the Johnson & Johnson causing a rare nerve issue, right? But let's say that is the case, that in some cases the Johnson & Johnson vaccine causes rare nerve issues, right? So again, we are looking at very disparate outcomes, right? If you do not get vaccinated, your likelihood of catching this disease skyrockets. If you don't get vaccinated, your likelihood of catching it and then having severe symptoms skyrockets, along with needing to be hospitalized and possibly dying, right? And these are as Vaush said, magnitudes of difference. He's now trying to scaremonger over, well, if you get one of those vaccines, which you can choose not to get that one, there is concern that it has caused in some of these people a rare condition regarding their nerves. So let me ask you then real quick. Would you rather get a nerve condition even if it's guaranteed, right? If you take this vaccine, you would definitely get this condition, but you won't die. Right? Got to weigh those two options. He's trying to present these as not only equally likely, but equally, equally impactful, right? So I don't know what nerve condition he's talking about, but I'd rather have a nerve condition than possibly die. And that's even if the nerve condition is a guaranteed outcome, which it's not. And this is such a small chance of this has such a small chance of happening in the first place that I haven't even heard about this yet. And this is stuff I listen to this is what I listen to for fun.
It's the case.
Which the FDA says it is.
Right. Well, they're looking into it, of course.
They issued an official warning that it could issue a rare nerve disease. That's a big deal.
Could issue, of course. They're looking into it, and that is something to look into and to be concerned about.
What's your opinion?
FDA attaches warning of rare nerve syndrome to Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Syndrome is low, and that the benefits still strongly outweigh it. Actually, I want to look into this. Johnson & Johnson rare nerve disease disorder. Okay, FDA adds warning to J&J vaccine for possible link to rare neurological disorder. The ComCast reports of 100. I'm just going to put this up on the screen. 100 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome following the. Okay. Okay. This is important. So now the next step is okay. So we'll look up the syndrome next, but the next step is number of Johnson and Johnson doses. Okay. Nearly short of the 100 million doses called for, but most people said the amount of. I want to list ingredients. I want the number of people. Number of Johnson. Here. Okay, so this means they're shortfall. Yeah, so they're not meeting the number of vaccines that they're supposed to be producing. Number of people given Johnson. COVID-19 vaccine. It's not really working to me. Oh, because I'm on freaking Bing. I hate that my browser is defaulted to this. That's not helpful. Is there anything here? Fully vaccinated. Oh, here we go. Number of people fully vaccinated does not equal the total number of Johnson & Johnson doses administered. Reported received one more. Why is it hard to find a number on this? Ugh, can't believe I can't find just a freaking number. Anyways, so there have been hundreds of thousands of people vaccinated with this particular vaccine, right? So 100 cases, and let's just go with low numbers. Let's say it's only been 100,000 people, right? Or I mean, 100 million people, because I guarantee it's exceeded that. So he's raising an alarm about 100 cases of a nerve. Actually, let's look up what that nerve disease is. Comes up as top search. Taxamine cells causes weakness and tingling in arms and legs. Is it? Overview. Symptoms. Varying degrees of weakness, tingling sensations, spread of weakness and abnormal sensations to the upper body, pins and needles, inability. Okay, so this is bad. Not gonna lie. That's not good. Is it as bad as the symptoms from COVID-19? Well, let's see. Why is it? I'll have to change that later. COVID-19 severe symptoms. Fever, chill, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, headache, trouble breathing. That's kind of important. Persistent pain, confusion, inability to wake or stay awake. Yeah. And these can kill you. This can kill you. Can this? Doesn't say. Right? So he's trying to compare. Oh, and then what's the math on 100 million doses versus 100 cases? Nope, that's not what I want. I can't believe I have to do this. Oops. 100. 1 million. So even at the height of COVID, right? What was the 2% death rate, right? Look at this. Look at this. 0.0001% chance of catching this rare nerve disease from one of the vaccines, from one of them. And this is the only vaccine that I've heard of that has any serious negative side effects, because there are others like aches and pains, right? But I haven't heard of any of the other vaccines even having anything serious, which I guess I know they're studying, right? But he's trying to raise the alarm over this kind of frequent... I am... The mental chip, the pretzels these guys will twist themselves into. I can't believe he is trying to push that. I am blown away that he even thinks this is a freaking point.
Of VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System.
Hold on.
Oh my God. Okay. So he's also trying to bring up VAERS. You know what VAERS is? VAERS is just a reporting system. All right. So if you look into it, turns out that VAERS, in regards to a lot of things, is often trolled. Right. So what VAERS does is just tracks the number of people who report something, regardless of the validity of the report. Someone eventually researches the actual claims to determine the veracity of it, to determine whether it's necessary to take this into account, right? But of the 60,000 reports in VAERS, 3 have been determined worth looking into. 3 of 60,000, right? So once again, he is going to reference something which is factually true, right? That there are VAERS reports, but what are the number of... Again, he skips right over the details, which are incredibly important.
First, I'm just curious because
Let's do the Guillain-Barré syndrome,
Yeah.
though. I think you want to.
Yeah, so of course, stuff like that can happen. Now, even if that claim is the case, it would remain the fact that unless the extent of that potential nerve damage is just apocalyptically severe, that the effects of getting COVID would still be far, far worse than the potential side effects of that vaccine. However, if you were to say, let's say worst case, Johnson & Johnson, it's not viable, that gets pulled. We see what the consequences are. That doesn't really speak against the greater viability of the vaccines. I got Pfizer, for example. We're talking hundreds of millions of people who have either been protected against the vaccine in part, or if they get it, against the virus, or if they get it, their effects, their symptoms are much, much, much more manageable.
So I just want to play into the irony here that I'm the one criticizing the pharmaceutical companies and you're the one defending.
Because the pharmaceutical companies providing necessary service. The problem isn't the companies. The problem is what the companies do in an effort to make profits, right? No one is saying that vaccines are bad. No one is saying that medicine is bad. No one is saying that pharmaceuticals are unnecessary. What they're saying is the use of these things to make profits at the cost of other people's lives is the problem. So the easy example is I'm forgetting what it's called. Insulin, right? Insulin is a life-saving medication. These people who need it literally need it to live. They die if they don't get it. And and numbers of companies make profits off of those people's need for it. And it has been priced to the point where it is nearly impossible for a number of people who need that to live to get it. So the problem isn't the pharmaceutical companies, because as usual, Charlie Kirk only understands the overarching concept, not the details within the concept, right?
I think it's delicious.
Wait, hold on. That's an extremely dishonest talking point.
Well, because you're peddling the Pfizer vaccine. You're saying
he's peddling a vaccine that does its job, preventing you from getting really sick when you catch a disease. So, God.
So effective. So many people have taken it. But I'm the one.
Because that's a fact. See, this is the problem with your arguments, right? He doesn't care that the vaccine is effective. He just cares that he doesn't like the vaccine, right? And so if Vaush's stance was, I don't like pharmaceutical companies, therefore I don't like anything they do, that's a what's the word I'm looking for? That is an intellectually dishonest stance, right? Because there's the possibility, I shouldn't even say there's the possibility. Pharmaceutical companies do produce drugs which are helpful for a lot of people. To claim that the pharmaceutical companies are not necessary or everything they do is evil is intellectually dishonest, because that's not the case. So Charlie Kirk is trying to one-up Vaush by saying, oh, see, I'm the one who's attacking the pharmaceutical companies in this instance. Why are you attacking them? Over what? These details are important, right? It isn't thing X is associated with this and this thing is evil, because that's not how this works.
Saying, hold on, maybe AstraZeneca, Moderna,
Charlie.
Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer.
This is
Let's talk about the points he's made. And
No, I was just enjoying the irony.
Well,
That's all.
the thing is, it's not really like irony if you understand the issue at hand. See, my praise doesn't go to the pharmaceutical companies or their CEOs. It goes to the tireless workers who spent months and months and months developing these vaccines.
Even if that was even if he was praising the CEOs, right? People should get credit for the good things they do. These companies rolled out vaccines that are necessary in this during this pandemic, right? These vaccines have allowed people to go back to work, to make money so that they can pay their bills, have allowed the flow of economic goods to roll again, right? Like, I don't even agree with Vaush's take on this, right? I don't care if praising the pharmaceutical companies would be considered praising the executives and the board of directors. I don't care. If they do a good thing, they should get that praise. Now, that's not necessarily like this isn't a decision that they made out of the goodness of their hearts. Obviously, they're making a profit off of these vaccines, but that's a separate argument.
Who's getting rich
Very big
from
fan.
this vaccine?
Well, hold on. Have I at any point praised the distribution or profiteering system
Who do you think
behind
gets rich
Pfizer?
from vaccine?
Who cares? That's not the point being discussed. If you want to have that argument, that's another argument. But that is in no way related to whether people should get vaccinated, whether the vaccines are good, right? The profits off of these things has nothing to do with the efficacy of them.
Mandates.
this is-
the
so this-
workers or
this
the
is a-
Pfizer CEO?
Nobody's talking about who gets rich. This is a toothless.
Isn't that your whole
Wait, hold on.
shtick?
This is a
Like,
toothless
workers'
critique that you
rights.
could.
Let's-
Charlie,
let's
hold
try
on.
and go back and forth. Man.
This is a toothless critique that you could apply to literally anything that you don't like. Everything in this country is manufactured to the profit
No,
of
but
CEOs.
we don't mandate it, and so you can't go to restaurants if you don't get one of
Yeah,
four
so-
major
but if you're-
pharmaceutical
so let me-
medicines.
so wait.
Also, I can't believe he's making this point. Like, what does the profits have to do with whether or not the product achieves its goal, right? And again, if you want to have that conversation, that is a separate conversation.
Wait, I just want to say, if that's your criticism,
That's one
then-
of many.
Then you should. So if that's the criticism you want to focus on, I'm in favor of nationalizing the pharmaceutical industry. I'm willing to take it that far. But whether or not that's on the table, and I can't just make that happen. When we're talking strictly about the effectiveness of the vaccine, it seems to be effective.
let's
That's not
talk-
a praise of the capitalist industry behind
No,
it.
I was just enjoying the irony. That's
It's
all.
not
So-
irony,
Well, it's
Charlie.
totally ironic because I'm the one saying that they might be lying to us, and you're the one that's saying it's super effective.
Wait, what
Which
lie?
you
Wait.
believe-
Okay, these are two separate things, right? What are they lying to you about, Charlie? What could they be lying to us about? And he's not believing the pharmaceutical companies that they're effective. He's believing the data from the CDC that says it's effective. He's believing the data from all the other organizations that have been doing their own research in all these other countries that are also receiving these same vaccines. Holy, I cannot believe the arguments this
we
idiot
were wearing our
makes.
traditional uniforms, right versus left, it would be the other way around. That's all I'm saying.
The only comment
But
I'm making
what
is
do
as
you have to
the
say about
effectiveness
VAERS,
of the
though? What do you have to
vaccine.
say about the vaccine adverse event reporting system that says, well, over 7,000 people experienced death after getting the vaccine? Does that worry you?
It's not 7. Oh, did I get that number wrong? Was it 6,000? And now I got to double check that. VAERS reports COVID. There we go. Oh, VAERS. VAERS. I just want the numbers. Number of VAERS reports COVID. Oh no. VAERS COVID-19 vet. There. Bring this up on screen again. 500. Ooh. Oh, I was very wrong. It's not 60,000. It's 600,000. Okay. 500. But let's just round up. 600,000 reports, right? There are 12,000 claims of death, 41,000 claims of hospitalization, 65 claims of urgent care, 89,000 claims of office visits, 4,000 claims of anaphylaxis, and 3,700 claims of Bell's palsy, along with some other minor numbers. Fell apart this week in spite of an aggressive propaganda campaign. Where am I reading this from? Open various images. Here we go. A report about the fact check. Fact checks are liberal propaganda. Total number of deaths in the U.S. age 0 to 39, about 9,700 for reference, and 0 to 29 is 20. So if you're a younger person, it's entirely possible that blank is more likely to kill you than blank. Screenshot shows COVID-19 vaccine-related fatalities exceed 12,000. While that article explains the CDC's disclaimers about the lack of VAERS causality on the VAERS website. Headline circulating. Screenshot only shows the headline and the text. December 14th, July 19th, reports 12,000. Next paragraph in the article, which is not visible in the screenshot, shows an update that the CDC modified the number from 12,000 deaths to 6,000. The next paragraph shows the second update from 6. Okay, and this is just the number of people that are reporting death, right? This is not the number of people who are actually dying because of this isn't even the number of people who died after getting the vaccine. This is the number of people who died in relation to it, according to VAERS. Requires healthcare providers report any of the COVID, even if it's unclear about. Okay, so the FDA requires healthcare providers to report any death after COVID-19 vaccination to VAERS, even if it's unclear whether the vaccine was the cause. Here's the other part. Anyone can report events to VAERS, and a disclaimer on the CDC's website says, the reports may contain information that is incomplete, inaccurate, coincidental, or unverifiable. When dialing the data, the inclusion of VAERS data does not imply causality here. Okay, so the number of reports in VAERS is 6,207, and anyone can report to this reporting program. It's the entire point of it, right? So, and granted, I heard this about a week ago, but they are looking into each and every one of these claims, and they will get to them at some point, but 3 have been determined worth investigating. 3 of 6,000. So yeah, let's go ahead and use your pumped up number, Charlie, which is still a lie.
The VAERS system is entirely self-reported. I don't think it's generally used.
Do you think
to
it's
form accurate
underreported
metric.
or overreported?
With VAERS, it's almost impossible to say. You know what VAERS is, right? Can you tell me what VAERS is?
Yeah, VAERS is a government website that physicians or individuals can submit complaints or concerns after an adverse event report from a vaccine. Since you cannot win in court against a vaccine production company, then they go through some process where the government then can distribute some form of remedy if you had an adverse event reaction.
Right,
That's what VAERS is.
And researchers like it because if you take a vaccine or you get some other procedure, any medical drug done, you can report the effects there, and it can be a way of gathering sort of aggregate data concerning the effects of these potential treatments. The problem is researchers don't use this as a bulletproof way of determining the outcome or effect of anything because they're literally just unvetted online submissions that anybody can put in.
So I
I
agree.
ask you because I want to know, how do you arrive at the conclusion that how many people did you say
Well,
applied?
it's VAERS' own data is 7,000 plus, and most of which, by the way,
That anyone can submit. But
no,
I'm asking
by
how
the way,
do you
most of
arrive-
which are physicians submitted. Just
Okay. Claims, and again, as we just read, these are claims about what happened? Oh well. So these are claims about. This is the comorbidity stuff all over again, right? Someone dies with COVID in their system. It is reported. Period. End of story. Then it is looked into whether or not COVID was the cause of death. And this is important information for studies later on in the future that will, this is important for scientists to study later on to come up with, to understand the impacts of this disease in the moment and in the moment that it's happening, and then in the future, right? So that's why this is they collect all this data, is so that they can study what happened later on, so that this doesn't so that we are better prepared for the next time something like this happens. But again, these are unverified reports of deaths related to COVID. These are it's people that got the vaccine and then died.
So you know.
Okay, and then his claim that the majority of these the majority of that 7,000 are physician reported. Okay, well, this is you're making this claim. Clearly, you've researched this. How many? What's the percentage? Because they do this all. I love the vague implications, right? What does the majority mean? It means most. That means literally 50. All it would take was 51%. Well, what's 51% of 7,000? 3,501. Okay, so just over half the claims need to be physician related to take all of them seriously, despite the fact that there are all kinds of caveats on how what kind of cases are reported to it. Like, this is so stupid.
These
The
are
total number?
the most of the submissions on the VAERS website.
Most. Again, see, he makes vague generalities because he doesn't, even if he doesn't have the hard numbers, which this is your argument, you should, right? But let's just say that it is let's say all of them are accurate. 7,000 deaths out of how many doses of the vaccine?
Are done by like family doctors or local physicians. So I'm just asking, what number of adverse event reactions would you say maybe there's something wrong?
But I'm asking,
10,000 deaths.
How do you know these deaths were caused by
20,000 deaths?
vaccines?
No, I'm just saying that's what VAERS says, right?
No, wait, but so I need
No,
to
no, okay. That's not what it says.
know this
We
because
don't.
You can, so
That's the
VAERS
question.
So wait, is these just people who have died after taking the vaccine? Like they may have died from some medical incident afterwards, and it just gets put up
This
there.
is
and we're
this is the
saying it's
question.
because of the
Usually, a
vaccine?
vaccine gets pulled when you have 15 attributable deaths. We have 7,000 that we have to go through. So the question is, when do you call timeout
Wait,
and say maybe we should
You're not answering the
mandate
question.
it?
How do you know that they're from the vaccine?
We don't. That's the point.
Oh,
but you
okay.
don't either. But the position is, let's mandate experimental medicine. We don't know actually what's
Well,
happening.
if you don't know, then how can you say that medical doctors are the one uploading this information? Is there
because
any methodology you're
we
looking at
we
to
do
determine
know
these
who's
deaths were from
actually
it?
uploading it. We know that. We know the entries are usually
the
and
claims
typically
being made?
traditionally. How about menstrual cycle disruption, loss of nerve capacity, unable to walk, paralysis, miscarriages, mood changes. Also, you could go through the VAERS database like, oh, that's interesting.
Mood changes.
Okay, wait. So let's assume he's being on, or let's assume this is an accurate portrayal of the information, because I don't believe a word he says. But let's assume this is correct, right? So of those, which sounds worse than the what you can get from actually catching COVID, right? Well, you can die, right? So the deaths are comparable, right? Menstrual cycle disruption. Okay, I'm not a woman, so I don't want to say something stupid here. But I have to imagine that I would rather have menstrual cycle disruptions caused by a vaccine that prevented me from getting disease which could kill me or hospitalize me. And the number, what are the, and then again, what are the odds of these specific things, right? So there's 7,000 claims. How many of those are deaths? How many of those are itchy nose? How many of those are nerve damage, right? Like, there's no breakdown of any of this information. There are 7,000 claims of negative effects after getting the or negative circumstance, whatever you want, negative effects after getting the vaccine. There's no way of relating it, or there's no way of confirming if it was the vaccine as of yet, right? This is just stuff that happened after they got vaccinated. And the range of what these adverse effects are so like, and even if, let's say all 7,000 are deaths, out of the number of people who got vaccinated versus the number of people who got vaccinated and then died after getting vaccinated, whether or not it was related to the vaccine, what's the percentage there, right? Like, they were obsessed over the 2% death rate. What's the death rate of the vaccine then?
But what about the death?
Let me interject
Death
something
is
real
7,000 plus. That's a serious
I
number.
wanna-
How do they know it's from the vaccine? I keep asking you this. You don't.
Let me
have
let
an
me
answer.
let me address 2 points, one from each of you, real quick, so we can try and. How do we know it's from the vaccine? It's a difficult question. I would say that if you have a mass vaccination program which gives out 330 million doses or so, and then people start saying, "Hey, I got the vaccine, then this happened." VAERS isn't here to say it is or isn't. They're here to say, can we find a pattern in this? And I think 7,000 suggests there may be one at the very least. I'm not a scientist, so I can't stress that. I will also say, however, to Charlie, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, it's a side
I
effect.
always mispronounce it.
Yeah, me too.
Guillain-Barré.
Guillain-Barré.
Yeah.
Bar. There you go.
Yeah, something like that.
My understanding is actually a side effect of many vaccines.
Yeah, it is.
And so,
Oh my! So the rare nerve condition you were talking about is a side effect of most vaccines. So why aren't you against other vaccines, Charlie? If this is such a big problem, oh my
That's
God!
correct. It could be.
well, so the issue I have is one of the things that Vaush brought up is that there's been, how many you mentioned, 100 million, 160 million?
In the
115, I think it is, million.
who have been fully vaccinated?
Fully vaccinated.
I think in that ballpark.
So of
Yeah,
course,
okay.
you know, if you have something very different from any other vaccination we normally do, because
Yeah.
we're not having everyone do it all at once.
Yeah, and so this is a mass inoculation thing. And so here's why the American system should answer this question easily. When you have any sort of uncertainty or disagreement, yield to rights.
So
No! Oh my God! That is such a horrible argument. Yield to rights? Which rights? Okay, and this is part of why this is an argument in the first place, right? So their argument is, I have the right to make my medical decisions. Okay, that's true. But your medical decision is now impacting everyone else's decision to be able to do things like go outside, go to the movies, go to the park, go eat at a restaurant, be indoors with other people, right? So I hate these stupid freedom arguments, okay? Your freedoms are your freedoms until they impact somebody else's freedoms. And then they are no longer your freedoms, they are something else. And where do you draw that line? Well, that's a gray area, right? This is very clearly one of those instances in which your freedom, your right to choose whether to take part in a medical technology, like this vaccine, now impacts other people and their freedoms. So, and I'm just going to make my stance on this really simple, or explain this in a very simple way. Okay? This is a numbers game. It takes one person not getting this vaccine to affect everybody around them. So it's literally 1 to whatever number you can fit within a close enough distance. It takes one person to affect multiple people. I'm sorry, you lose. Your right to not take part in a medical event like this does not trump everybody else's right to live a normal life.
Yield to rights. Allow
Well,
people
so-
to say no. Let me just build out the argument, right? So for me, for example, I'm 27. I don't consider COVID to be a largely disproportionate risk to my way of life. I don't know about this vaccine.
But it's not about you. This is the problem, right? This vaccine is not about you and whether you catch the disease. You as an individual catching this is not important. What is important is you catching it and then spreading it. And spreading it to people who are not being given a choice about whether they catch it or not. Right? Oh, I should rephrase. An informed choice, right? If these people want to make an argument, I don't want to get vaccinated, then okay, wear this sign that says you're not vaccinated, so that I know that I am taking a risk by being near you, and that other people know they are taking a risk by being near you, so that we know we are exposing ourselves and thereby the other people who are in our lives to danger by being in your presence. Because if this is really about your freedoms, then you need to respect my freedoms too. This is about your choice and you being able to make that choice, that informed choice. Then I also need to be able to make an informed choice about how I'm going to be impacted by your choice. And that's what this is about. That's entirely what this argument is about. This is not about the individual and their choice. This is about the impact that an individual's choice has on everybody else around them. And I hate when they make this argument.
I have gotten other vaccines in my life, so I want to be able to have the right to say no to that. So the American system,
Oh my God, I'm only
Constitution,
15 minutes in and I'm...
the tradition is to be able to have people have nuance, preferences, and individualism. When it comes to these sort of complex issues, not saying you can't go to a restaurant because we want you to take experimental medicine.
Right. So a couple of points on that. First of all, if we're speaking to legal rights, the Supreme Court found over a century ago that when it came to vaccinations, this was a special exemption from some people's rights to
I will
determine their
agree with
medical
you
history.
that the
So
courts
it's like
are not on my side.
1904 in that one. And there's a reason why. Because, of course, when you choose not to take the vaccine, you contribute to the removal of others' freedoms. See, it's true. You do have a freedom to not or to take a vaccine. But I think other people should have the freedom to not grow up in a world ridden by plague. And with the way this disease, COVID, mutates with time, as all diseases do, inevitably, if it continues to circle the world long enough, and this is an international problem, not just an American one, new strains will develop, which will slowly ebb at the effectiveness of this set of vaccines. So it threatens all of us. May I say one other thing?
Yeah,
No,
of course.
Sorry. With all of that being said, just to speak to VARS, VARS is an incredibly effective system for locating and roughly attributing concerns related to the effects of drugs. The problem is that there are several elements to this disease that make it really difficult to pinpoint anything specific. The two of which being A, hundreds of millions of people vaccinated. That is a huge range to pull data from. And B, the propagandist fear campaign about an incredibly effective vaccine process that may lead people to misattribute
I just want to get a
deaths that
quick
they
clarification.
experience
Yeah.
to vaccines.
Sorry.
But just quick clarification. Are you for mandating the COVID-19 vaccine?
The same way we have other vaccines, like school, travel, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So, like, what if someone wanted to go to a restaurant or a supermarket or a movie theater?
I think that, we don't have that for other vaccines, right? Like,
Right.
every time you go to a movie theater, you have a little card. I understand that might be an effective panic measure, but long term, my goal would be to integrate it into the same revenue of vaccines.
I think that's a more reasonable response than some politicians. I'm
Yeah.
just going to be honest.
People are
That's-
panicking.
No, I think that's a more
people die.
well, yeah.
I just want to make sure we
Right.
weren't having misunderstanding.
No, I
over
think that's
whether-
more of a reasonable answer. I just curious, just on the vaccine topic in general. Are you concerned by Dr. Malone coming out, who literally invented the mRNA vaccine and says that there's a dangerous spike protein involved, and he encourages people to think twice before getting it? Does that move you at all?
Well, you're free to speak with your doctor when it comes to a
No, Dr. Malone, just his specific commentary. Does
his
that,
specific
the guy
commentary.
who invented this type
Right.
of vaccine.
Well, I'm not a PhD, and I doubt that he was directly involved in the production of these
No,
vaccines.
he literally invented this
the
type of
mRNA,
vaccine.
but with the Johnson & Johnson, the Pfizer, the Moderna.
But he's very, very aware of the sort of accelerated implementation. He's trying to call time out and tell people this is not like any other vaccine.
What
Does
is
that
his
worry
claim?
you? His claim is that it involves a spike protein. It was rushed to market. It's going to have side effects. You don't understand it like I did. I invented this. And you got to think twice before mandating it or even taking it if you're under a certain age. Does that bother you?
What makes the current retinue of vaccines that we take, the mRNA process, different from other mRNA
It doesn't involve the
vaccines?
spike protein. According to him, the same composition as like the measles, mumps, rubella type vaccine or the
give
chickenpox
up.
vaccine.
Well, those weren't mRNA. The process wasn't developed back during the mRNA.
Camera's not
vaccine.
working.
Totally.
Have to deal
Some of
with
them are getting updated for the more mRNA type technology,
But
right?
he wasn't involved in the production of these modern vaccines. How could he possibly have any comment on any of the rigors or tests that were done
Because he
before?
invented this type of vaccine. I'm just saying,
But
does that bother you? Do you think
He invented the technology that goes into the vaccines. He invented the technology that's used to create them, right? Okay. But that's like saying the guy who invented the computer, right? The basic concept of a computer can warn you about the specific problems you're run into with the computer you've gotten, even 6 months after he created it, right? It's produced by a different company, may use different components. Technology has gotten better since he invented it. Like, this is...
he's just like a fear propaganda?
Also, it's really interesting that he'll listen to that doctor, right? He is fully on board with what that doctor said about the vaccine, but Dr. Fauci, he's a liar. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The other majority of medical doctors who endorse the vaccines, can't believe them. Like, he's real selective with the authority figures that he believes, too. You notice the convenience there of who he does and doesn't believe?
No, he may well have concerns, but those are concerns that I would rather have addressed by the scientific community rather than, with respect to you and myself, YouTubers.
Well, no, I agree. So, but the question is which scientists, right? So there's a lot of
It's not which specific see, you're the one that great, pause right there. You're the one who's interested in which scientists are saying what. I don't care which specific scientists say what. What I care about is the amount of scientists who say A or B, right? If the majority, and like, when I say the majority, I mean like 60, 70%, right? Like, what is a comfortable level of the number of experts who understand the details of this topic? How many of them believe it's good, and how many of them believe it's bad, right? So I would not be comfortable with a 50-51 split. I would not be comfortable with a majority, right? Somewhere around, if 70% of doctors said this is good, that's what I'm going to believe, right? Because the majority of doctors believe it. But I'm also open to the understanding that, like, hey, we didn't do enough research. Hey, we didn't understand this enough. Hey, this is a new disease, so we didn't think about this or that, or that, right? Like, so I hate this. I hate these. Which doctors? I don't care which ones. I do not care if every doctor who was involved in this process says this is no good, if every other single doctor says it is, right? Because I don't care about the individual inputs. What I care about is the community at large, the experts on this topic at large, and what they think.
scientists speaking out against this. Dr. Brett Weinstein, Dr. Malone.
What
right?
is Dr. Brett Weinstein's
He's an
specialty?
evolutionary biologist, so he knows a little bit about how
That's not virology.
cellular function works.
That is not virology. That is a completely spurious
So let me
association.
do you trust Fauci more or Dr. Brett Weinstein?
It's not about Fauci. It's about Fauci.
He's a virologist who's been wrong about everything.
It's about the
let's-
global. Well, hold on. He's smiling with glee here. It's the global medical community in this regard.
Thank
you. Mean like
you.
you mean like the WHO? Like
No, I'm not-
Yes.
Hold on. Wait.
put a
please,
name
please.
behind it.
Yes.
Wait. He's very excited.
I don't put a name behind it. I don't care. I do not need one individual doctor. What I need is the community of doctors and what the community at large believes. God, this is so stupid.
I just want to say, it's not just about the WHO. We're talking about a unified effort on the part of virtually every country on Earth to get a hold of the vaccines that us Americans are privileged to have. This isn't some like pharmaceutical Dr. Fauci push that wasn't broadly supported by any of the relevant experts. In the mRNA field, which is not huge because it's a very new development, internationally, there is a demand for these vaccines.
I wanted to add, just based on what you had said, I can pull up Reuters. Their fact check is that vaccines are not, quote, cytotoxic. They go on to mention that Robert Malone, and they show the Brett Weinstein podcast, they show the post, the FDA was alerted months ago that the spike protein in the COVID vaccines are cytotoxic, toxic to cells. The FDA did nothing. Reuters says this is not true. Now, the issue at hand is trust. Like you mentioned, you said, do you trust Fauci or Weinstein? I don't know if there is a...
Okay. Here's the important part. So far, there is no scientific evidence available that suggests spike proteins created in our bodies from the COVID-19 vaccines are toxic or damaging our organs. Experts at the Medine Digital Health Lab said. So again, what are the majority of people in this field? I'm sorry, not the majority. What is the overall community of experts on this subject saying? Put a name to it. I don't care. I don't care which one doctor endorses it or doesn't endorse it. What I care about is what most of them are saying. I shouldn't use most. It's vague. But, like, obviously that number will range depending on what the thing is.
A fact-based argument if you have the doctors you trust and the doctors you trust or the organizations you trust.
And that's a very big difference, by the way. The individual you trust, the individual doctors who have opinions, and granted they are informed opinions, right? An evolutionary biologist is going to know a lot more about diseases than I do, right? But he is not an epidemiologist. He is not a virologist, right? So how much more is his opinion worth than the opinions of than any individual epidemiologist and any individual virologist? And again, what do the majority of those people say? And it is it's nearly unanimous. I hate this appeal to authority without understanding what authority actually like entails. Like if there is an organization which has a number of people to check each other's research and prevent people from having poorly informed opinions, which I can't imagine many doctors would about when it comes to medical stuff, right? But like the opinion of an individual is nothing in comparison to the opinion from an organization, a group of individuals.
Flash of who you believe to be
Well,
honest.
none of us have the credentials to just come up with these arguments on their own. There will always be bias in who we choose to believe. However, given the plurality of people seem to support the safety and the
That's the word I'm
effectiveness
looking
of
for,
vaccine,
plurality.
and the fact that it doesn't take a virologist to notice that over 500,000 Americans have died of COVID, more than the combined death tolls of every war since World War I combined, including the Second World War in Vietnam. Those are things that I don't need to be a virologist to see. I can see it
can I ask you a
happening.
question,
That's
though?
pretty bad.
One of the issues that's brought up frequently, especially on Twitter, is that many of these COVID deaths are died with COVID, as it's brought up, where people would say something like it tends to be people who are over 70 or things like that. I'm only bringing that up not to make the argument, but because you said, how would VAERS know if these are actually related to the vaccine?
I'd love to.
Well, and we'll find out afterwards. In the meantime, how do we prevent more of those deaths? By getting vaccinated. Because even if those people aren't dying from COVID specifically, right, they are dying with it in their system, which is causing the numbers to increase. How do you prevent people from having it in their system? By preventing it from spreading. How do you prevent it from spreading? Through the vaccine, because I've already gone over this. I don't want to keep repeating myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So COVID rarely, directly kills you. Like age, it causes a breakdown in other vital functions that then their death can be attributed as such. So, for example, of the many things that people die, it's not really COVID. It's just that COVID blanks their entire system internally, and eventually something fails, something breaks, and they die. There were
Very much like AIDS, right? So AIDS causes your immune system to basically stop functioning. I think lupus functions in this way too. But yeah, there are a lot of things that we attribute deaths to because it harms your ability for your body to function normally. They're like
were people claiming that there were deaths being spuriously attributed to COVID-19 very early on in this pandemic, but thankfully we know that's not the case because if you take a look at the excess mortality numbers, the number of people who should die every year in the United States, because there's a very normal pattern, normally with this many people in this country, we see an excess starting when COVID started that almost perfectly graphs on to the rising death waves of COVID. I mean, it perfectly tracks onto that.
I just want to say for you, Charlie, I think the issue I see here is, for me, it's I can't trust or distrust. I don't know. I think Brett Weinstein's a very smart guy, and I don't think he's going to lie to me. And these doctors are very smart people. And then I see the government agencies that I don't always trust the government. To be completely honest, I'm not a big fan. But to believe that there's like a nefarious effort or anything like that, ultimately what it comes down to is, in my opinion, having a trusted medical professional that you can consult with.
Well, I totally.
No, it is not about an individual medical physician, right? Now, that's not to say that someone who's thinking about taking the vaccine should not talk to their doctor, because every individual person's medical needs are different, right? Whether you as an individual can or cannot take the vaccine is very different from this vaccine is bad for people in general, right? On top of, I don't care what your individual doctor says about the efficacy of this vaccine. The numbers say one thing, and the overwhelming majority of doctors in the medical community say the same thing.
Totally agree, and I think there could be an argument that if you're over the age of 70, that this vaccine might be a really good idea for you. However, to mandate it for schools and for colleges, when these are highly complex medical decisions, that's where I'm going to push back against it.
Okay, so then why are you not against vaccines for polio? Why are you not against vaccines for measles, mumps, rubella? Why is it only this vaccine? So there is no consistent through line with your argument here, right? If you have this problem with this vaccine, then you have this problem with every other vaccine. Except you don't talk about people should stop getting their kids vaccinated. Is that the line of argument, Charlie?
Well, real
rather
quick,
complex
let me
medical
point
They are
out, though,
complex
the
medical
Johnson and
decisions.
Johnson vaccine is not an mRNA vaccine, though. Is that's my understanding?
I
It's an
don't want to
MMR?
speak out of turn.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think
love to be
that's right.
fact checked on that.
I'm not totally sure.
My memory is
So
faulty.
I guess another question I
Oh,
have.
it's
What
an-
do
yeah.
you think of
It's another thing is the Johnson Johnson one
alternative
is
type
not.
treatments, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin? Why the push for mass inoculation?
Well, because hydroxychloroquine's
Because none of the other alternative methods have worked, Charlie.
studies have found it largely ineffective. There was, I believe, a French study that stopped when people started dying of heart failure. I think the only reason the right dies in this hill is because Trump mentioned it. I don't think there'd be a push for it otherwise. The vaccines are the effective way of getting mass populations inoculated. And while it is true that most of the people who die are ancient, the fact remains that people experience long-term side effects.
know how I feel
from
about
getting
that
COVID,
comment.
even if they survive. I know people who are in their 30s, and me, a blistering 27-year-old myself. I'm not especially worried, but I've heard them talk about how much harder it is for them to climb up flights of stairs. I know that erectile dysfunction, fellas, is one of the listed potential side effects of getting COVID. Even young, healthy, no other problems. It is true that death is most comorbid with age and pre-existing conditions, but still. And that's not even to speak of the COVID variants. I mean, right now you were on, Delta? But if it keeps cycling around the world, let it go for another year. Who knows how bad this could get?
So Johnson & Johnson is not an mRNA vaccine. So there's an alternative to mRNA if you're concerned about it.
And there was some guidance with the nerve disease with that. Sorry to interrupt.
I do think
Again, 100 cases out of how many doses of the vaccine?
we kind of overlooked something really interesting is that when did we mandate vaccinations in public schools?
Well, I know the Supreme Court case concerning this was in 1904,
Yeah.
so I would know it would have to have been earlier than that. I know that Washington even had his troops vaccinated, though I
For
forget.
smallpox.
Yeah.
Smallpox, was it?
Yeah.
Why aren't you get smallpox vaccines, Charlie?
Which is pretty crazy to think
Inoculated, not vac. Yeah, you're right.
about. Right, I don't know what they did, hit people with a rock and then
It was
pour
like
liquid
like a
in.
needle, I think.
It was-
and they would
yeah.
they would prick you with the needle that had like a weakened sample or something.
And they would have had to forge that needle, like with a blacksmith. Isn't that crazy to think about? Like Washington's,
I know, like someone pouring it and then
Yeah.
today it's just a machine that makes it.
It's just wild to think about.
Well, so, man, I think
This was
the
supposed to be
real
about
issue
CRT too, by the way.
is just mandatory.
Well, I just also have another question. Do you think that there might be any bad motives behind these four companies, AstraZeneca, Moderna?
I don't care. Let's assume that they're all evil bastards. What difference does this make when the outcome of getting the vaccine is that you're not likely to catch it, and if you do catch it, in the overwhelming majority of cases, you only have mild symptoms. Who cares? Let them make their money. Like, I'm not a big fan of pharmaceutical companies. I'm not a big fan of big corporations in general. But when it comes to this specific thing, I do not care what they get out of it. I care about the effect of people getting vaccinated with these vaccines.
Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson, considering they are big pharma and they pursue profits, which generally, as a libertarian socialist, you're skeptical of, do you think maybe they might have nefarious motives?
Oh, their intentions are reprehensible. They have for many years made money off the backs of American deaths. The opioid crisis is almost entirely attributable to the
And the
malfeasance.
Sackler family.
Yeah, I mean, no moral love for these companies. If this could be, and by the way, the mRNA process was developed through public funding. It was, an effort invested in by the collective good, something I'm generally supportive of. When it comes to these companies themselves, and when I say, go get your Pfizer vaccine, whatever, please do not mistake this or anything else that I say for an endorsement of the practices of these companies. It is only through
Yeah, these are
cruel
two
twisted
separate
fate and
things.
the economic system we live in that they are the ones put in a position to handle this. But it was the workers at those companies, not the CEOs, who did the work.
I'm just curious. Does that ever make you stop short and say, maybe they're trying to massively?
No. You are now trying to claim that the pharmaceutical companies have such a powerful reach that they are literally able to get almost the entire medical community on a global level to endorse something that is nefarious. You are literally talking about conspiracy theories now.
Inoculate us on a vaccine that might not be as effective to try to pursue profit, not well-being. Does that ever enter into your
It's a
kind of calculation?
consideration. It's a consideration you should take about anything produced by any company that's run for profit, which is everything. Basically every need in American society is tempered by the knowledge that there are people out there who are paid very large salaries to sell it to you. This is the case for everything we do, everything we eat. Every time you run down Main Street, or in my case, I guess, the boulevards in Los Angeles, you're seeing the protracted efforts of $1 billion industry to make sure you want things they're selling. Could that be the case for COVID? Undeniably, there was a profit incentive involved. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. And there was probably a protracted effort on the part of these companies to make sure they were the first, and they probably took every dirty advantage they could
What
get.
if the-
But
so- yeah.
with the data available, I have to still, much as I would say, hey, I would prefer eating McDonald's food to starvation, I have to say this is probably still something we should be doing.
Do you want to do? I don't want to stand. It's been 20 minutes.
No,
so
for
do you
sure.
Wanna, do you want to make a final point?
Maybe you would starve instead
I
of
actually
McDonald's,
think
I
this
don't
has been really constructive and not like that, inflammatory. I think that deep down you have this kind of, urge that I'm already there, where maybe they want this thing to go on for another decade to go make another $100 billion, and maybe
No,
the cheap drug
they-
of hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin might work better than they might think.
I don't have that urge.
Other studies would disagree with you earlier. We could change the topic. I just think it's
So
that was a healthy discourse.
Can I meet in the middle on that one, on that very last one?
Yeah.
I do not trust the pharmaceutical industries, though the available evidence does seem to point to the effectiveness of the vaccines. I say this, nationalize the pharma industry. Seriously. It could be used for the collective good, and I would unironically actually trust it more in the hands of our ineffective, bloated government than I would the sociopaths who run it currently. And
So
I mean that.
I'll wrap this up by saying, always talk to your doctor. This is one of the biggest things. Like YouTube is very strict on this, especially. But I genuinely think this is the right answer. If you're watching this, don't assume anyone here is right or wrong. I mean, I'm sure there are people who think Charlie's made a bunch of good points, and you.
Okay, yeah. So for clarification, what he's about to say applies to me as well. I am not saying every single person should get the vaccine. What I am saying is every person who can should. And if you are uncertain, you should absolutely talk to your doctor. Because it is entirely possible that you're one of those few people who can't get it.
You have ultimately it's down between you and your doctor. And
Which, by the way, makes it all the more important that everyone who can get it does. Because there are people who can't get this vaccine for a number of reasons. Therefore, it is up to the rest of us to get it to protect those people who can't.
And I'll stress, for whatever your opinion, Charlie, I understand. Hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin haven't been approved by the FDA, and so that's just another.
We're just asking questions whether
Right.
it works or not.
So that's why I think it's really.
Oh my God! They're just asking questions. I can't. This line. We're just asking questions. No, you're not asking questions. There's a difference between asking questions and seeking actual answers, and trying to undermine the faith in the system that is designed to protect these people. Right? These aren't just like arbitrary decisions that someone's making to push a political football. These are communities of scientists whose job it is to take care of people medically, examining the data, and then giving their highly informed opinion.
Important because I think there are.
By the way, and that does apply to both sides. I'm not saying people who are naysaying this are lying or anything like that. I do understand some of the doctors and having concerns, right? Like, and that's good. It's but it's where they espouse these concerns and what they're over.
I got to be honest. In regards to ivermectin, people have been eating horse paste that they sell. I looked up what the FDA says about it. They say do not do this, and they actually give a very good reason. They say, although people are claiming that if an animal can take it, someone else can. That's not true. There's some things that dogs can't have that humans can. Right. So please talk to your doctor. And I definitely hope we can continue having debates about this stuff because that was vastly important.
I should also probably clarify because I've been railing on Charlie. It's not the questioning of things that's the problem. There are narratives that the media and the government push that are complete bullshit, and I absolutely endorse questioning those. But again, it's a full understanding of what are we questioning, and do we understand why we are following this line of inquiry, right? It's not just about asking questions. It's about what questions are we asking, and then also it's incredibly important to also be willing to accept the answers that you arrive at, or you or other people arrive at when asking those questions, like the actual researched answers, right? So part of the problem that I have with we're just asking questions is that these questions are asked, right? Like there's a lot of questions that I've heard Tucker Carlson talk about on his show. I've heard Charlie Kirk bring these up. I've heard Tim himself. Like they're Ben Shapiro, right? All these guys that are just asking questions. These guys are not like some super geniuses and whose IQ and intellectual prowess surpass everyone in the medical community. I guarantee the questions they're asking, someone in the medical community has asked, and I'm willing to put money on it that they're already answered. And these guys just either aren't looking for the answers to those questions that they're asking, or if they do, don't bring them up in the discussions where they ask those questions because the answers don't agree with the suppositions that they're trying to push by bringing up those questions in the first place.
I'm really glad you guys were able to have that conversation.
I hadn't even heard of the horse paste thing. That's
Yes.
horrifying.
Ivermectin is technically a drug for horses. It's
Veterinary.
off-label use.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a dewormer. And so you can go to like
Oh.
Tractor Supply and they have a sign that says like, "Do not eat this," and please.
Any drug for horses will burn a human out from the inside.
I feel
Those
like it
things
might,
are.
yeah.
You've been to your horse. They're titans. They're like.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the other big topic, critical race theory. You know, that's the one that I had a terrible answer, absolutely, when you asked me about it, and it was because I think my
Wow, it's pretty base of Tim to admit that he had a bad response. Okay.
approach to it was too surface level.
Oh, by the way, I know this through watching other people. I know Tim believes what he says, right? So like, I get angry at someone like Candace Owens, who is, I don't want to say verifiably, but like, because you can never really tell what someone's thinking. But like, this is a woman who clearly follows the money, right? If yeah, I don't want to get too far into it because this is already going to be a ridiculously long video. But yeah, like I'm less mad at people like Tim who genuinely believe what they're espousing than I am at people like Candace Owens who, who demonstrably or have a history of believing the opposite of what they're saying at some point in time to make a profit.
Cultural. So the last time we had Vaush on, when you asked me about it, I couldn't give you a good answer. And I think we can talk about what's happening in schools, the things they're teaching children, and I don't know if either of you has an opinion and wants to start off with.
Floor is yours.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? This has gone on for an hour and a half. I'm going to have to come back and do another video on this. So the next time I will be going over what this is supposed to be about, CRT. Thanks for watching. And